For centuries, the fall of Rome has been seen as a slow, inevitable decline, decadence, lazy emperors, and a crumbling society. But historian Peter Heather challenges this view, arguing Rome was not simply decaying from within. Instead, he claims the Western Roman Empire was destroyed by overwhelming external military pressure. The real culprits? The Goths, Vandals, and others, driven into Roman lands by the terrifying advance of the Huns. Heather's Rome is not a dying oak, but a strong tree struck down by a series of violent lightning bolts. These bolts were massive migrations and wars beginning in the late 4th century that shattered the empire's stability. Rather than searching for signs of internal rot, Heather urges us to look at the frontiers, where Rome faced unprecedented challenges. These were not minor raids, but mass movements of entire peoples, desperate, militarily capable, and unstoppable. The Roman state, for all its sophistication, was simply overwhelmed. The fall of Rome, Heather argues, was not a gentle transformation, but a violent, contingent event. It was a tragedy of circumstance, not a story of self-destruction. This perspective shifts our understanding. Rome's end was not inevitable, but the result of catastrophic shocks. Heather's argument reframes the fall as a story of violence, migration, and military defeat. The empire's collapse was sudden, not slow. The barbarians were not just opportunists. They were the product of a chain reaction set off by the Huns. Rome's fate was sealed not by internal weakness, but by the scale and speed of external threats. Heather's thesis forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the end of Rome. To grasp Heather's argument, we must look to the steppes of Central Asia, where the Huns appeared in the mid-4th century. Their arrival sent shock waves across Europe, displacing peoples and triggering chaos. The first to fall were the Goths, who fled the Huns and arrived at the Danube in 376 AD. Refugees, not invaders. The Roman authorities, unprepared and corrupt, mishandled the crisis, turning desperate migrants into rebels. The Goths, unified and enraged, rampaged through the Balkans, creating a full-blown crisis. This was not a minor border incident, but a direct result of Hunnic pressure. Rome's problem wasn't inherent weakness, but the unprecedented scale of migration. The Huns had weaponized other groups, turning them into a massive military and demographic threat. Rome had never faced such a coordinated, large-scale movement before. The crisis on the frontier was an external shock that changed everything. Heather's thesis hinges on this. The empire was destabilized by forces beyond its control. The Hunnic catalyst set off a domino effect that would ultimately bring Rome to its knees. The Gothic crisis climaxed at Adrianople in 378 AD. Emperor Valens, overconfident and impatient, led his army against the Goths, only to be ambushed and annihilated. The Roman legions were surrounded and slaughtered. Valens himself died on the field. This was not a minor defeat, but the destruction of the Eastern Empire's core army. The myth of Roman invincibility was shattered. For the first time, Rome was forced to accept a large, autonomous barbarian group within its borders. The Goths became foederati, settled as allies, not conquered subjects. This set a dangerous precedent. Outsiders could now force their way into the empire. Adrianople was not a symptom of decline, but a cause. A military disaster with cascading consequences. The loss of veteran soldiers created a manpower crisis, forcing Rome to rely even more on barbarian recruits. The empire's ability to absorb newcomers was fatally compromised. Adrianople marked the beginning of the end as military defeat led to political and social unraveling. If Adrianople was a wound, the loss of North Africa was a mortal blow. In 406 AD, the Vandals and others crossed the Rhine, eventually sweeping into Spain and then North Africa. Led by Gaiseric, the Vandals invaded and conquered Rome's richest province. Africa was the breadbasket and financial heart of the Western Empire. Its loss was catastrophic. The fall of Carthage in 439 AD cut off grain, tax revenue, and resources. The Vandals built a fleet, dominated the Mediterranean, and even sacked Rome in 455. With Africa gone, the Western Empire could no longer fund its armies or defend its borders. Military weakness led to further territorial losses, creating a vicious cycle of decline. Heather sees the Vandal conquest as the point of no return. The loss of Africa was not the result of economic decline. It caused the final collapse. Rome had recovered lost provinces before, but Africa was different. Repeated attempts to retake it failed. Without Africa, the empire was finished. The Western Empire became a failing state, unable to sustain itself. As Rome lost land and revenue, its military transformed. Chronic shortages of native soldiers forced emperors to rely on barbarian groups as entire armies settled on Roman land as foederati. These allies became powerful, independent players. Barbarian generals like Stilicho and Odoacer held real power. The emperor became a figurehead. The army's loyalty shifted to its commanders, not Rome. This internal fragmentation was a direct result of external pressures. Rome's survival depended on hiring one barbarian group to fight another, a devil's bargain. When the state could no longer pay, loyalty vanished. In 476 AD, Odoacer deposed the last emperor, ending the Western Empire, not by invasion, but by internal dissolution. The empire's own military structure, dominated by barbarians, simply dissolved it from within. Heather builds his case by re-examining historical sources and archaeology. He argues that written accounts, though biased, reveal a narrative of violence and disruption, not peaceful change. Heather traces a clear chain of events. The Huns trigger the Gothic crisis, leading to Adrianople, which weakens Rome and enables further disasters. Archaeological evidence destroyed villas, disrupted trade, matches the timeline of military catastrophe. For Heather, material decline follows military defeat. Critics argue he oversimplifies, relying too much on elite sources and downplaying internal problems. Some archaeologists see evidence of continuity, suggesting gradual transformation in some regions. The debate centers on whether collapse was sudden or gradual, violent or peaceful. Heather's work reignited the controversy, forcing historians to confront the scale of disruption. Heather's work directly challenges the dominant late antiquity school led by Peter Brown, which sees Rome's end as peaceful transformation. Brown's view, Roman and barbarian cultures blended, creating the medieval world. Heather's view, military catastrophe and violent collapse. Brian Ward Perkins supports Heather, emphasizing the material decline, poorer living standards, loss of goods and economic hardship. Kyle Harper adds another layer, highlighting climate change and pandemics as crucial external shocks. These perspectives suggest Rome's fall was a perfect storm of crises. The debate remains unresolved. Was it internal decay, peaceful change, violent collapse, or all of the above? Heather's key contribution, restoring the reality of military conflict and the agency of the barbarians. He forced historians to take external threats seriously in the story of Rome's end. Why does Rome's fall still fascinate us? Because it's a warning. Heather's argument challenges the comforting idea that empires only die from within. He shows that even powerful societies can be destroyed by external shocks beyond their control. Rome in 375 AD was strong, but a chain of contingent events, Huns, migrations, military disasters, brought sudden collapse. History, Heather reminds us, is fragile. Strength is always relative to new challenges. The Roman system was unprepared for the world the Huns created. Stability can be an illusion, adaptability is crucial. Heather revitalized the debate, forcing us to confront the violence and chaos of Rome's end. By focusing on barbarian migrations, he reframed the fall as a dramatic, tragic event. Sometimes empires don't fade away, they are violently pushed over the edge.